My name is Keiko Nakamura. I am 72 years old, and I have lived long enough to watch people drown in their own belongings. I was born in Kyoto. I raised 3 children in a house no larger than what most Americans call a starter home. We had no storage units, no spare bedrooms stuffed with forgotten furniture, no garages overflowing with equipment nobody touched. We had discipline, intention, and a very old understanding of space that most of the modern world has completely forgotten. Last spring, my neighbor Fumiko, 79 years old, widowed, preparing to move from her family home of 44 years into a smaller apartment near her daughter, stood in her hallway, surrounded by 4 decades of accumulated life, and told me she did not know where to begin. She had 3 days before the movers arrived. Her children lived far away. She was completely alone, with rooms full of memories she could not bring herself to touch. I came to her house the next morning with tea and a very simple plan. 24 hours later, her home was clear. Not just tidied, truly, completely, ruthlessly clear. Fumiko wept, not from grief, but from a relief so physical she had to sit down and breathe through it. What I taught her were not my own inventions. They are Japanese methods. Some are ancient. Some have been refined by modern necessity. All of them work with a speed and decisiveness that Western decluttering advice rarely achieves, because Western advice is too polite, too cautious, too afraid to hurt your feelings. These tricks are not gentle, but they are deeply respectful of your time, your energy, your remaining years, and the life you still have ahead of you. Here are all 7. Pay attention, take notes, and then please actually use them. Trick 1, the merchant's eye. See everything as if you are selling it tomorrow. In Japan, there is an old merchant tradition. Before a trader could assess the value of any object, he had to learn to see it without attachment, the way a buyer sees it, not a keeper. This is your first weapon. Walk into any room in your home and ask yourself one single question about every object you see. If I were selling this tomorrow at a street market, what would a stranger honestly pay for it? Not what you paid, not what it cost in 1987, not what it means to you emotionally. What would a complete stranger hand you in cash for this item right now, today? This question does something remarkable. It strips sentiment away in seconds and replaces it with clarity. Fumiko walked into her kitchen and looked at 31 coffee cups. She does not drink coffee. She drinks green tea from one favorite cup each morning. The merchant's eye took 90 seconds to assess that kitchen. Keep 4 cups for guests. Donate the rest. Done. Move on. She looked at 3 complete sets of formal dinnerware she had not used since her son's wedding reception in 1993. The merchant's eye was ruthless. A stranger would pay very little for mismatched formal china from a previous decade. It was taking up 3 full shelves of precious cabinet space. Gone. The merchant's eye works especially well on items that feel important because of what they represent rather than what they actually are. An expensive appliance you used twice represents a hopeful intention you once had, but a stranger buying it at your market stall sees only a dusty machine. See it the same way. In each room, give yourself exactly 10 minutes with the merchant's eye. Do not linger. Do not negotiate with yourself. A real merchant makes fast decisions. That is how they stay in business. Move room to room, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, living room, hallway, storage spaces, 10 minutes each. The merchant's eye does not get sentimental. Neither should you. Trick 2. Ma, the sacred practice of empty space. In Japanese design, architecture, music, and daily life, there is a concept called ma. It means pause, gap, emptiness that is not absence, but presence. It is the silence between notes that makes music meaningful, the space between objects that allows each one to breathe and be seen. Western homes treat empty space as a problem to be solved with more furniture and more objects. Japanese homes treat empty space as the goal itself. Here is how this becomes a decluttering weapon of extraordinary power. Before you decide what to keep, you must first decide what your empty space will look like. Stand in your bedroom, close your eyes. Now imagine this room with only the furniture you actually use. The bed, one table beside it, a single lamp, a small dresser. Imagine the floor completely clear. Imagine one or two objects that bring you genuine peace when you look at them. Hold that image. Now open your eyes and look at what is actually there. Everything that does not belong in your mental image needs to leave. This is not a daydream exercise. This is your decision-making template. You are not asking, should I get rid of this? You are asking, does this belong in my vision of this space? That is a completely different question, and it is far easier to answer. Fumiko used this method on her living room. In her mind's image, she saw a clean tatami-style space. Simple, calm, a low table, 2 comfortable chairs, 1 small plant on the windowsill, and her late husband's photograph on a single uncluttered shelf. That was her vision of Ma. Her actual living room had 7 pieces of furniture, 4 stacked side tables, 2 armchairs, plus a full sofa she never sat on, artificial flowers in 6 vases, decorative plates on every surface, and a cabinet full of ornamental objects she dusted twice a year out of obligation. The vision made every decision simple. Does this sofa belong in my Ma vision? No. Does this set of decorative plates? No. Does this one photograph of my husband? Yes. The vision protected her from second-guessing. When you have cleared a space and left it deliberately, intentionally, beautifully empty. That emptiness is not loss. It is the point. It is the practice. It is Ma. Trick 3, Ichigo Ichi, this moment, one time only. Ichigo Ichi is a Japanese phrase that means one time, one meeting. It is the understanding that this moment, this exact moment, will never come again. It is used in tea ceremony to remind participants that this particular gathering of these particular people in this particular season will never be repeated, and therefore deserves full, unhurried attention. Applied to decluttering, it becomes a powerful antidote to the paralysis of someday. Every time you say, I might need this someday, you are choosing an imaginary future over your real present moment. Ichigo Ichi asks you to choose presence over fantasy. Here is the practice. Pick up any object you are hesitating over. Hold it in both hands. Ask it one direct question. Are you serving my life right now, in this moment, as it actually is? Not as it was, not as it might theoretically become, as it actually is today. Fumiko held up a set of children's educational workbooks she had saved for grandchildren who might visit. Her grandchildren were now in their 20s and lived in Canada. They had not visited in 6 years. The workbooks were from 1998. She asked the question, "Are you serving my life right now?" The answer was immediate, obvious, and final. Out. She held up a bread machine. Same question. She bakes bread perhaps twice per year, and her neighbor does it for her when she asks. The bread machine existed entirely in the land of someday. Out. She held up a small ceramic bowl her mother had made with her own hands. The question, "Are you serving my life right now?" The bowl sat on her kitchen counter and held her keys every single day. She looked at it every morning and thought of her mother with warmth and love. In, obviously, beautifully, permanently in. Ichigo Ichi cuts through the fog of maybe and someday with the sharp clarity of now. Use it on every item you hesitate over. The hesitation itself usually contains the answer. Apply this to entire categories. Craft supplies for hobbies you walked away from 3 years ago. Are they serving your life right now? Formal clothing for occasions that no longer exist in your current life right now. Books that were important to someone you used to be right now. The answer moves you forward. The question prevents paralysis. Trick 4, Motenai with boundaries. respect without hoarding. Motenai is one of the most important words in Japanese culture. It expresses deep regret over waste, the sadness of discarding something that still has value, the shame of not using what has been given to you. It is an ethical stance toward objects and resources that carries real moral weight. And it is the reason many Japanese homes, and many senior homes everywhere, become overwhelmed with clutter, because motenai, applied without boundaries, becomes hoarding dressed in virtue. Here is the truth I have learned in 72 years. Motenai was never meant to mean keep everything forever because throwing things away is shameful. It was meant to encourage using things fully, repairing things instead of discarding carelessly, and passing things on when you are finished with them so they continue to be used. The key word is passing on. True motenai is not keeping 12 spatulas in your kitchen drawer unused. True motenai is giving 11 of those spatulas to people who will use them every day. The object fulfills its purpose. No waste occurs. The spirit of motenai is honored by letting go, not by clutching. Fumiko had held on to an enormous collection of her late husband's tools because throwing them away felt wasteful and disrespectful to his memory. But they sat in a dark shed, rusting, untouched for 6 years. Nobody used them. Nobody benefited from them. We brought them out into the daylight. We organized them. Then Fumiko invited her neighbor's teenage grandson, who was studying to become a carpenter, to come and choose whatever he needed. He spent 2 hours in that shed with tears of gratitude on his face. He left with tools that would build things for the next 40 years. That is motenai, with boundaries, not wasteful, not selfish, purposeful and generous. Apply this framework to every category you have been keeping out of guilt. Clothing that no longer fits. Moteinai means someone else wears it instead of nobody wearing it. Kitchen equipment you never use. Moteinai means a young family cooks with it. Books you will never reread. Motenai means another reader discovers them. You are not wasting. You are releasing into usefulness. Trick 5. The samurai's single cut. Make the decision. Once, forever. A samurai did not reconsider a decision already made. A blade committed to its direction does not waver midway through the motion. Indecision in battle was death. In decluttering, indecision is a different kind of death. The slow suffocation of your remaining years under the weight of unfinished choices. Most people do not have a clutter problem. They have a decision problem. They pick up an object, feel uncertain, put it back down, walk away, come back tomorrow, feel uncertain again, put it back down again. Months pass, years pass. The object remains because no one ever made the single committed final cut. Here is the rule Fumiko followed, and it is absolute. Every object is handled exactly once. A decision is made immediately. The object goes directly into one of 3 physical locations: a keep box, a donate box, or a trash bag. It never returns to where it was. It is never set back down in an ambiguous pile to be reconsidered later. One handling, one decision, one direction. The samurai's single cut. To make this work at speed, you need your 3 physical destinations ready before you begin. Place them in the room, label them clearly, then move through the space with discipline and without mercy toward yourself. The moment you feel the urge to create a maybe pile, recognize it for what it is. Delay dressed as caution. There is no maybe pile. There is keep, donate, and release. Choose one, place the object, move to the next. Fumiko cleared her entire bedroom closet, 44 years of accumulated clothing, in 55 minutes using this single method. Not because she rushed carelessly, but because she made each decision cleanly and refused to make it twice. When a decision is genuinely difficult, when you pick up an object and feel real emotional weight, give yourself 30 seconds. Set a timer if you need to. At 30 seconds, wherever your instinct points, follow it completely and without negotiation. Your instinct is almost never wrong. Your second guessing is almost always fear pretending to be wisdom. The samurai's cut is merciful precisely because it is quick. A slow, uncertain wound causes far more suffering than a clean, decisive one. Trick 6. Wabi-sabi selection. Keep only what has earned its place through real life. Wabi-sabi is the Japanese aesthetic of imperfect, transient, incomplete beauty. It finds meaning not in pristine possessions that have never been touched, but in objects that carry the marks of genuine use and real living. The chipped edge of a beloved teacup, the worn patch on a favorite cushion, the handle darkened by decades of faithful hands. Wabi-sabi gives you a powerful and very specific selection tool. Keep objects that have actually participated in your life, not objects that merely represent intentions you once had. Go through your home and ask of each object, has this been truly used? Does it carry the beautiful marks of real living? Or is it pristine and untouched because I never actually let it into my life? Pristine things that have never been used are not treasures. They are regrets in storage. Fumiko found beautiful silk scarves, expensive, lovely, absolutely perfect, that she had never worn because they were too beautiful to risk. They had sat in a drawer for 22 years, perfect and useless, no marks of life on them at all. Out they went. She found a simple, slightly faded cotton apron that had hung in her kitchen for 35 years, stained, soft, shaped by 10,000 cooking sessions. Her children's handprints were pressed into it from a long ago afternoon of teaching them to bake. That apron was irreplaceable. It stayed. Wabi-sabi teaches you to value the marked over the perfect, the used over the preserved, the lived in over the carefully protected. By this standard, your genuine treasures become immediately obvious, and the imposters, the beautiful things kept beautiful by never being lived in, become equally obvious. Apply this to your clothing. The perfectly preserved formal suits versus the comfortable sweater shaped to your body over years. Apply it to your kitchen equipment. The gleaming specialty appliances versus the modest knife that cuts beautifully because you have sharpened it 100 times. Apply it to your books. The pristine unread collection versus the annotated copies with your own notes in the margins. What has actually earned its place through real participation in your real life? That is what stays. Everything else is aspiration masquerading as possession. What is the most genuinely wabi-sabi object in your home? The one most marked by real living and real love? Describe it in the comments. These are the things worth keeping. Nar. Trick 7. Kansha, the ceremony of gratitude that makes release permanent. This is the trick that makes all the others work at the deepest level. Without it, you may clear your home but feel only loss. With it, every release becomes a completion, and completion brings peace. Kansha means gratitude. Deep, conscious, expressed gratitude. In Japanese culture, gratitude is not merely felt privately. It is spoken aloud, physically expressed, and ritually completed. You do not simply think thank you. You bow, you speak, you mark the moment so that it registers permanently in your body and your memory. When Fumiko was ready to release an object, after the merchant's eye had assessed it, after Ichigo Ichi had confirmed it was not serving her present, after the samurai's cut had made the decision final, she did not simply put it in the donation box and walk away. She held it with both hands. She looked at it directly. She spoke out loud what it had given her, and then she released it with a small, deliberate bow. It sounds slow. It is actually the fastest path to permanent release because it closes the emotional loop completely. Without closure, you second guess. You rescue items from boxes at midnight. You feel vague sadness and loss that makes you reluctant to continue. With Kansha, each release is finished. It is done. Your body knows it is done because you have said so aloud and marked the moment. The mind does not return to what has been properly completed. Fumiko sat with her late husband's work clothing, suits he had worn to his office for 30 years, pressed and kept perfectly even after his death. She was not ready to release them, she told me. I said, "Tell them what they gave you," so she did. She spoke of the mornings she had watched him dress for work, the pride she felt, the smell of his aftershave, the way he had looked over his shoulder at the door to smile at her before leaving. She spoke for several minutes. Then she was quiet. Then she bowed, and she placed the suits in the donation bag herself, firmly, without hesitation. The gratitude ritual does not need to be long. For minor objects, it may be 5 seconds. A simple "thank you for your service, you may go," and a small bow. For significant objects, it may take several minutes. Let it take what it needs. Then close it completely and move forward. Fumiko's adult children, who arrived the following day to help with the final loading, walked through a home that felt not empty, but exhaled. That is the only word she used, exhaled, as if the house itself had been holding its breath for years and had finally, gratefully, let it go. Fumiko called me 3 months after her move. She had joined a ceramics class. She was learning to make tea bowls, beginning very badly and finding it completely wonderful. She had a new friend who was teaching her a card game she had never learned. She told me she woke up in the mornings feeling light in a way she had not felt in many years. She said, "Keiko-san, I thought I was clearing my house. I was actually clearing the path." I am 72 years old. I have watched many of my contemporaries spend their remaining years managing their possessions instead of living their remaining life. I have watched people delay travel because they could not leave the house unattended with so much in it. I have watched people refuse to have visitors because they were ashamed of the clutter. I have watched people feel imprisoned in spaces they once loved. The objects were not keeping them safe. The objects were keeping them still. These 7 Japanese methods are not about minimalism as a design philosophy. They are not about having fashionably empty homes. They are about recovering your energy, your clarity, your sense of what each day is for, and the particular freedom that comes from living only with what genuinely belongs in your life as it is right now. You do not need 2 days. You do not need your children to come home and help. You need discipline, a clear method, and the willingness to acknowledge that your past is complete and your future is still being written. Begin today. 1 room, 10 minutes with the merchant's eye. A vision of Ma you want to inhabit. The samurai's single cut applied with kindness and decisiveness. By tomorrow, you may feel something you have not felt in years, not loss. Kansha. Gratitude. And underneath it, space, real space, in your home and in yourself, for whatever extraordinary thing comes next. Which of these 7 methods will you begin with today? Tell me in the comments. I read every one, and I answer when I can. I am still here. So are you. Let us not waste what remains.